My sister-in-law accumulated a prodigious debt through fraudulent order manipulation. My family resorted to moral coercion, compelling me to settle her debts. Do they really take me for a pushover, a laughingstock unworthy of respect? Had I not experienced a brush with death, I might have remained their puppet, doomed to relive a life of subservience. I am determined to make them pay a steep price. When I opened my eyes anew, I found myself on the day my brother sought my advice. I said that my sister-in-law's engagement in such practices was an attempt to earn extra income and ease his burden, and that we couldn't be so heartless. Reincarnated, I was sent back to the Spring Festival 15 years ago, when my sister-in-law amassed a debt of $1,000,000 due to gambling and fraudulent order-boosting activities. It was then that the question of divorce loomed. My mother wailed and implored my brother to divorce her. With his head in his hands, my brother, consumed by despair, turned to me and asked, "Little sister, what should I do?" The desperation in my brother's and mother's eyes gave me a start. In my past life, I mistook their pleading looks for familial trust. Driven by a sense of family responsibility, I suggested a temporary solution. Divorce legally but continue living together to safeguard at least one adult figure, especially considering my young nephew. If that $1,000,000 debt were to be classified as joint marital property, it would drag the entire family into financial quicksand. The debts my sister-in-law incurred from gambling and fraudulent activities were not used for household expenses. We could transfer the debt solely to her, thus protecting the family home. As for any money my brother wished to give her privately, it would be better to use cash. This way, the money in our bank accounts wouldn't be seized. However, my brother flatly refused, stating that divorcing her at this moment would be equivalent to sentencing her to ruin. Subsequently, under my mother's threat of taking her own life, he ultimately consented to the divorce. To my utter dismay, I later discovered that my sister-in-law and nephew had overheard every word from outside the door. My sister-in-law poisoned my nephew's mind, insidiously asserting that I was the one who had forced her to divorce his father, that I was the architect of their shattered family. She malevolently declared that should any misfortune befall him, I would be the sole culprit. So deeply ingrained was this false narrative in his mind that upon entering university, the very first act my nephew committed was to attempt to poison me. This time, meeting my brother's expectant gaze, I spoke with solemn gravity. Whether it was my sister-in-law's gambling, or her engagement in fraudulent online transactions, her every endeavor was aimed at earning more income and alleviating your financial burden. It would be the height of callousness to divorce her at this critical juncture. My brother stared at me, visibly taken aback. He had evidently anticipated that I would echo my mother's urging for divorce. With a heavy sigh, he hung his head and rubbed his face wearily, instantaneously appearing several years older. "Indeed," he murmured, "your sister-in-law has endured great hardships these past years, sacrificing her own comfort to raise our child. She has gone without proper nourishment, restful sleep, or new garments. Divorcing her now would be tantamount to condemning her to despair. But how on earth am I supposed to come up with over $1,000,000? You wretched girl. What did I tell you on the phone? In their current predicament, if they don't divorce, it will drag your brother, your nephew, and me down into ruin." As she berated me, my mother rained blows upon me. "But if we divorce her now, aren't we pushing her to the very brink of destruction? She hasn't worked outside for so long. Burdened with such an overwhelming debt, how can she possibly survive? And what of little Yao? He's still but a child. Depriving him of his mother, how would he regard us in the future? How could he face his father?" As I evaded my mother's blows and scoldings, I repeated the words my brother had uttered in my previous life. "How are we going to repay over $1,000,000? Sell you? Or sell me?" My mother dissolved into hysterical sobs. "We're family, and when adversity strikes, we must shoulder the burden together. How can one simply wash their hands of the situation? Is that human behavior? You surely wouldn't want, after getting married, for your husband to sever ties with you at the first sign of trouble. Right, don't you think so, brother?" I tossed the question back to him. My brother was clearly caught off guard, never expecting the dilemma to be thrust back into his lap. "Little sister is right. I married Zhou and she's part of our family. Worst case scenario, we'll sell the house," he said, his face etched with agony. The house had been purchased less than 2 years prior. My parents had provided the down payment, and he was responsible for the monthly mortgage payments. Since we lived in a small county town with a low cost of living, property prices were correspondingly modest. After selling the house and settling the mortgage, we'd have at most a bit over 500,000 yuan left. But that sum was merely a drop in the ocean compared to my sister-in-law's 1.2 million yuan debt. How on earth was she going to pay off the remaining 700,000 yuan? Upon hearing this, my mother resumed striking me. "If you do something wrong and get divorced, you deserve it. What more do you want? Are you trying to destroy the whole family?" I hid behind my brother. "Brother, talk to mom. She doesn't understand you at all. I pulled my brother in front of me as a shield, leaving my mother unable to reach me. I added, Mom, during the past 2 years at work, didn't you ask me to give you half of my salary to save for my dowry? With my brother in such dire straits now, we should lend that money to him. I'm not getting married anytime soon, so I don't need it for the moment. In my previous life, my mother claimed I was reckless with money and persuaded me to hand over most of my salary for my dowry savings. I obediently complied. Only later did I discover that she'd used every cent to subsidize my brother's household, leaving me in such financial straits that I had to resort to borrowing through an online credit service to pay for my appendectomy. As soon as the words left my mouth, my mother was momentarily speechless, then launched into another fit of rage, striking me. Borrow? This is your brother. Look at his situation. Do you really expect him to pay you back? I said I'm not in a hurry to get married. Just give the money to my brother for now. We can figure out the rest later. After saying this, I turned to look at my brother. His evasive gaze told me he must have known all along that the money my mother had given him was originally mine. But I feigned ignorance. Brother, I've saved nearly 100,000 yuan with Mom over the past 2 years. Take it to help sister-in-law out of this bind. This is the extent of what I can do for you. My brother glanced at my mother, and immediately, my mother erupted into another bout of wailing. You say you have no savings? You live at home and consume resources here. Don't you think you've spent money? Was it easy for me to raise you? Isn't it only right that you give me some money? And now you bring up this dowry business? Have you no sense of humanity left? I was stunned. Mom, what are you saying? You didn't spend all the money I saved with you, did you? That was at least 100,000 yuan. It could have helped my brother and sister-in-law for a while. How on earth did you squander it? I was even more anxious than them, on the verge of tears. Ever since I was a child, my parents favored my brother. It wasn't until I had an appendectomy that I truly realized this. They didn't give me a single penny, nor did they come to visit me. I had a huge argument with my mother and ran away crying. Before she could threaten me with suicide again, my brother quickly sold the house to pay off my sister-in-law's debts. My mother called me in tears, asking what to do. I said, how should I know? And received another round of scolding. But now such scolding no longer affects me. In my previous life after I died, my mother wept at my funeral. Pan, don't blame Xiaoyao and don't blame Mom. We didn't know what those things he gave you were. He's still young and childish. He couldn't get over his mother's death. If it weren't for you, your brother wouldn't have divorced your sister-in-law. Alas, he's the root of our Shen family. Please forgive him and forgive Mom too. After Shen Yao entered university, once I fell ill. The hospital examination showed that my blood sugar was slightly high, and the doctor said controlling my diet would solve the problem. Shen Yao seemed very concerned. He brought me a lot of medicine, saying it was prescribed by an old professor at his hospital. The consultation fee for that professor was over 1,000 yuan each time, and it wasn't easy to get an appointment. He told me to take the medicine every day and asked my mother to supervise me. But later I found out that all those medicines increased insulin sensitivity, greatly increasing the risk of inducing diabetes. I didn't know this at the time and thought he had grown up and become caring. It wasn't until I suddenly lost a lot of weight and went to the hospital for another check that I learned I was in the middle to late stages of diabetes. Later, I suffered frequent fractures and had to rely on a wheelchair to get around. On the day I was dying, I heard Shen Yao say, if it weren't for you, my parents wouldn't have divorced, my mother wouldn't have died, I wouldn't be friendless now, and I wouldn't have been separated from my father for so long. I've been your puppet for years and I've had enough. You deserve this. Did those medicines taste good? I can't believe you were so stupid. You took them for so long and still didn't die. You really are a curse that lingers. After I died, my soul floated up, and I saw my mother outside. She heard everything, knew everything, but chose to sacrifice me. Later I heard her say, you don't know. Your brother later had a pair of twins. Those 2 children are so well behaved. If you were still alive, you'd surely like them. It turned out they always knew where my brother was and had never lost contact with him. Everyone just kept it from me, afraid I'd send Shen Yao to him. Don't blame your brother for being heartless and not coming back all these years. He still misses Zhou Qin. If you hadn't forced them to divorce back then, and they had gone to hide elsewhere, maybe they could have avoided all this. My mother then rambled on, telling me many things I didn't know, like how my brother's second wedding was very lively, and how his new wife had a bad temper and was difficult to take care of during her confinement. She asked me not to blame my brother or Shen Yao. My brother sold the house at a low price, almost as I expected. After paying off the mortgage, there was just a little over 500,000 yuan left. Later, he took out a loan of over 400,000 yuan from a local credit union in our hometown, sold his car, my parents scraped together every penny they could, and borrowed more money. Finally, they paid off all my sister-in-law's loans, uninstalled the apps, and firmly bound the debts to her. The 3 of them moved to the countryside to live with my parents. At first, because of her mistakes and the huge debt she caused, my sister-in-law was very submissive at home and got along fairly well with my parents for a while. But soon, it was as if my mother had amnesia, ignoring all the conflicts we'd had before. She frequently called me, complaining that my sister-in-law was getting lazier, spending all day on her phone, either playing mahjong online or at the village mahjong parlor. She didn't cook and didn't look for work. She also said my brother was working over 10 hours a day, taking 2 jobs without a single day off each month, and my sister-in-law didn't show him any compassion and argued with him all the time, turning the home into chaos. I just hummed an agreement and then said I was busy at work and hung up. After that big argument with my mother, I rarely went home. I applied for a job with a higher salary but frequent business trips. Of course, besides criticizing my sister-in-law, my mother also played the emotional card, crying and asking me to go home, sometimes saying she was sick, sometimes saying she was dying. But I knew these were just ploys. Her ultimate goal was to make me pay to support my brother. Just like in my previous life after my brother left, my parents pretended to be ill, and I constantly ran around because of them, delaying a lot of work. In fact, they didn't have any serious problems. They just wanted to create an illusion to make me feel sorry for them, and take the initiative to take care of Shen Yao. And I fell for it in my previous life. But this time I wanted to see what would happen if I stopped trying to save them, and let them face their own fates. So I took a vacation and went back. You're so heartless. Just because I scolded you a few times, you haven't come home for half a year. When I went back with gifts, my mother grabbed me and started crying. In just half a year, she seemed to have aged more than 10 years. Her white hair couldn't be hidden. My sister-in-law hadn't changed much. Besides being a bit more polite to me, she still played mahjong as usual. As for Shen Yao, a 6 or 7-year-old child, although he moved to the countryside, he still went to school in the county town. But the changes at home made him extremely timid. I guess he got scolded a lot at home. In my previous life, after I analyzed the consequences of divorce and non-divorce for my brother, he firmly refused to divorce. I chose to respect his decision, but my mother took extreme measures, threatening suicide. The whole thing dragged on for days. In the end, he gave in and got divorced. Then my sister-in-law had a car accident, and everyone blamed me. Before leaving, my brother even beat me in a fit of anger. I stayed in the hospital for half a month. When I was dying, he cursed me viciously. You heartless wretch should go to the 18th level of hell. If it weren't for you, Zhou Qin wouldn't have died. I wouldn't have lost my family and lived in shadow all my life. You destroyed me. You're the one who should die. It's unfair that you're still alive. Only then did I realize how much he hated me. Now looking at him in his early 30s but looking as haggard as someone in his 40s, I sighed and comforted him. Brother, don't push yourself too hard. We can pay off the debt slowly. After all, the interest rate of the credit union loan isn't that high. Don't ruin your health. If you do, you won't be able to see the Haoxi that's coming. If I remembered correctly, there would be a big event in 2 months. There's no other way. With so much debt and your sister-in-law not being any help, your brother is the only one the family can rely on, my mother chimed in, looking at me hesitantly. I knew she'd soon start crying poverty and playing the emotional card to make me help my brother. Looking at my brother and father silently smoking one cigarette after another, I said, "Aren't there still you and Dad? We're all family. We can get through this after a few years of hard work." My parents did odd jobs in the countryside to make a living, and my sister-in-law took care of Shen Yao and picked him up from school. My mother said she had tried to find jobs like supermarket cashier or stock clerk before, but she quit each job within a month. My brother even had a fight with her over this and they'd been ignoring each other ever since. What kind of talk is that? Aren't you part of this family? My mother pretended to be angry. I rolled my eyes and didn't respond. After chatting for a while, she couldn't hold back anymore. Pan, your job is good and stable. Have you saved any money in the past half year? Your brother is in such a difficult situation right now. If you can help him, he, your sister-in-law, and nephew will always be grateful. You don't want to see your brother under so much pressure, do you? Look how old he's become in just half a year. Saying this, my mother wiped away her tears, genuinely Xintung her son. Mom, the company hasn't been doing well lately. I'm on business trips for most of the month. It's hard work and doesn't pay much. After paying rent and for food, there's nothing left. Then come back and live at home. I asked you but you refused. At least you could have warm meals here. And since you're not even living in that rented place for half of each month, paying so much rent is such a waste. That money could be saved to buy Xiaoyao some new clothes. Why are you so wasteful? My mother kept scolding me. I said bluntly, everyone should take care of their own children. I have no obligation to support him. Then I left without having dinner, saying I had work to do at the company. No matter what they said, I wasn't going to give them any money. But to my surprise, before 2 months had passed, my sister-in-law's affair blew up. One day, my mother called me screaming, telling me to come home immediately, saying my brother had been arrested because of my sister-in-law and Shen Yao was seriously injured and in the hospital. She didn't know what to do. I got back in the middle of the night. When my mother saw me at the hospital, she started crying. Later, I pieced together what happened from her words. It turned out that while playing mahjong, my sister-in-law met someone and had an affair with him. When my brother heard about it and went to catch them, Shen Yao actually defended his mother, and my brother beat them both. She's a jinx. That Jian woman actually took Xiaoyao with her to cheat. How could she do this? Your brother should have divorced her in the first place. Now look, she ran away with that man, your brother is in jail, and your nephew is lying here. What are we going to do? My mother grabbed me and cried, then started hitting me while scolding. If it weren't for you stopping your brother from divorcing her, how could all this have happened? It's all your fault. Perhaps my expression was too cold, and she was afraid I'd leave in a fit of anger. She didn't finish her words. It wasn't me who stopped him from divorcing. He was the one who willingly endured that life. He deserved everything that happened. I retorted bluntly. In my past life, I was at the scene when Zhou Qin had the accident. She got into a scuffle with a man, and that's when the car crash occurred. The man fled right after. Later, I investigated and found out that they had been involved with each other over a year ago. They concealed it so well that it wasn't until my brother and Zhou Qin divorced that she openly carried on with that man. I suppose my brother knew the truth in our previous life, but he refused to face it and instead blamed everything on me, as if doing so could spare him from his miserable fate. You can't abandon your brother, my mother wailed, the sound pounding in my head. Let's see what the police station says tomorrow. How's Xiaoyao doing now? After a long bout of sobbing, she replied, go pay his medical fees first. The doctors have been to us several times. I ignored her, paid the fees, and then consulted the doctor about Shen Yao's condition. He had a broken arm, and there was earshea and a concussion from a head injury, sustained when my brother pushed him while he tried to stop my brother from hitting Zhou Qin. When I visited him, he was playing a video game with his uninjured hand. And do you have any money? He asked without even looking at me properly. How about 50 yuan? Is that enough? I knew he'd probably use it to top up his game. In the past, I wouldn't have given it and would have lectured him. But now, I immediately took out my phone to transfer the money, even willing to give more. It's not quite enough, he Sertan Ed. 200 yuan would be great. I transferred 200 yuan to him. He was delighted and went to buy in-game skins, and I was equally satisfied as I left the ward. In my previous life, Shen Yao was also addicted to games, but I kept a tight rein on him. This time, let him indulge in his decadence. The next day, the police said that Zhou Qin's lover was willing to reach a settlement, but demanded 50,000 yuan in compensation. My parents immediately insisted that I pay. If it weren't for you persuading your brother not to divorce, this wouldn't have happened. It's all your fault, and you have to take responsibility. I simply shrugged and said I had no money. My mother lashed out at me again, hitting and scolding, until I promised to get my brother out. Then she tearfully apologized, saying she had no choice but to rely on me, giving me the attention I had yearned for but never received in my past life. But this time let whoever wants it have it. Zhou Qin's lover was a ringleader of illegal gambling, and involved in illegal fundraising. Not long after Zhou Qin died in my previous life, he was arrested. So, I anonymously reported him to the police, and he was apprehended the same day. Ridiculously, after he was arrested, Zhou Qin came to beg my brother for forgiveness, and my brother actually forgave her. After Shen Yao recovered, the three of them returned to their old ways. But once the cracks appeared, they couldn't be mended. Their frequent arguments escalated into fights, small ones every 3 days and big ones every 5. The house was constantly filled with hatred and shouting. I thought that if they spent their lives tormenting each other instead of harming others or me, it would be a blessing in disguise. But I was wrong. They still set their sights on me. Just as I was promoted and given a raise, before I could even celebrate, my brother called, saying my mother was ill and urging me to go home. I delayed for over half a month. When I got back, I found that my brother had somehow become addicted to gambling. In a smoky mahjong parlor, he and my sister-in-law each sat at a table, engrossed in the game. Only when they saw me did they reluctantly leave their seats. At home, my mother was cooking. She seemed to have aged even more in the nearly a year since I'd last seen her. As soon as she saw me, she grabbed me and cried. After letting out all her grievances, she got to the point. Xiaoyao got into a fight at school because he was being bullied. Now the school wants to expel him. Your brother has no idea what to do. Don't worry, we just want to transfer his guardianship to you so he can study near you. It won't bother you. It turned out that Shen Yao often fought at school, and this time he was involved in a group brawl, a very serious offense. The school decided to expel him, so my mother and brother came up with the idea of having me take him in. Where's Xiaoyao? I haven't seen him at home. I changed the subject. In my previous life, Shen Yao had poor grades and liked to hang out with troublemakers. I moved several times to give him a better environment and finally bought a rundown apartment in a good school district at great expense so he could get a hookup there. Thanks to that, he cut off contact with his delinquent friends. I also spent a fortune on tutoring him to improve his grades, and he eventually got into a top 10 medical school in the country. Little did I know that all my efforts would be seen as me controlling him, depriving him of freedom and friends, turning him into a puppet. He's probably out with his friends, Zhou Qin said indifferently. My brother chimed in. Don't worry. He's your own nephew. Since you've helped him, he'll surely be grateful in the future. You said you don't want to get married, right? He can take care of you when you're old. I'm sorry, brother, I can't help with this. My job requires me to travel most of the time, and I can't take care of Xiaoyao. My mother panicked. Why not? Just change your job. The industry I'm in is in a slump. The company laid off a bunch of people last month. Changing jobs now, I'm not sure I can even find one, let alone a suitable one. I can't do it. My mother started crying again. Xiaoyao is your nephew. We're family. You can't just ignore him. Zhou Qin echoed. Yeah, as an aunt, you can't just let him call you that and not help at all. If you're too busy, I can go take care of him. My mother clapped her hands in agreement. That's it. Your sister-in-law can go take care of Xiaoyao. And since your brother is looking for a job, there are more opportunities in the city where you are. I almost laughed. It was obvious they had planned this. Do you really have no idea how you act? You want to live with me? How dare you? Take care of your own child. Just because he calls me aunt doesn't mean I'm his mother. If I were, I'd give him a good beating. My mother was stunned, probably not expecting me to speak to them like this. Zhou Qin interjected. Can't you just help your nephew? I can't. I'm broke. I just paid the down payment for an apartment in the provincial capital. I only have 2,000 yuan left. I even showed them all my accounts and they finally believed me. My mother lashed out at me, but I said, I really don't have the money. And last month I had an appendectomy and had to borrow money on credit. Mom, don't you remember? I called you from the hospital and said I wanted to eat your steamed eggs, but you said you were too busy. My mother's expression changed, and she seemed to feel a twinge of guilt and stopped scolding me. I continued, My rent is due this month and I decided not to renew it. How about you and brother rent an apartment in the provincial capital? Then I'll have a place to stay when I'm on business trips. I left without even drinking a sip of water, getting cursed at by my mother on the way out. As I was leaving by car, I saw Shen Yao fighting with a group of thugs on the street, his eyes filled with vicious excitement. They say a person's character is formed early in life. It seemed his cruelty had been there since childhood. But this time I didn't care what happened to him. Let his parents deal with him. Later, I heard that after Shen Yao was expelled, he went to a school in the rural town. One of my primary school classmates was a teacher there and happened to be his homeroom teacher. She often told me to ask my brother and sister-in-law to discipline Shen Yao, saying that if he kept skipping school, getting into group fights and hanging out with bad guys, his life would be ruined. I just shrugged and said it wasn't my problem. Eventually she stopped bringing it up. Shen Yao would occasionally contact me asking for money, and I'd give him 100 or 200 yuan. That was all I could spare, and he was always happy to see me after I gave him the money. He'd also ask me not to tell his parents, which suited me just fine. Then there was a personnel reshuffle at the company, and I was asked to go to another city with my direct supervisor to start a new branch. It was tough work, but it was also a huge career opportunity. In my previous life I had a similar chance, but I gave it up to take care of Shen Yao and my parents. As a result, during the industry shakeup soon after, I was sidelined at work. This time I didn't hesitate and followed my supervisor. I wanted to see how far I could go and how high I could climb on my own. The next time I heard news from home, it was about my brother. He had been abusing Zhou Qin because she was flirting with someone online, and she wanted a divorce, but my brother refused. During a fight, they pushed my mother, who hit her head and passed out. When they couldn't afford the hospital bills, I was in the middle of a big project and didn't want to be distracted, so I blocked their numbers. Later, my brother came to my company, but when he learned from my colleagues that I had already resigned, they couldn't find me and had to borrow money everywhere to pay for my mother's treatment. Then one day, Shen Yao raped a female classmate. The girl reported him to the police, and he was arrested. He had just turned 14, and the girl's family refused to settle. They were determined to send him to jail unless my family paid 1 million yuan in compensation. My mother called me in a panic. "You have to help Xiao Yao this time. He's your nephew. Who else will look after him if you don't?" I said I had no money. My mother cursed at me nonstop for over 10 minutes. I could vividly imagine her hysterical expression through the phone. "I've checked. You're the general manager of your branch now, with an annual salary of 1 or 2 million yuan. How can you bear to see your nephew have a criminal record at such a young age? He's my nephew, not my son. Besides, who made him do such a heinous thing? It wasn't me." My mother shrieked. "Is this what an aunt should say? Has your conscience been devoured by a dog?" "Well, then you might as well assume my conscience has been eaten by a dog," I replied. My mother was left speechless for a moment, then burst into tears. "You're an ungrateful wretch. I should have drowned you at birth. Not only would that have saved us from paying those hefty fines, but I wouldn't have to endure your defiance now. Was it easy for me to raise you? Are you so heartless that you want to sever all ties with us, never see us again, and die alone without anyone to mourn you?" She paused briefly before launching into another tirade of abuse. I simply put the phone aside and let her rant. 1 million yuan is no small sum. Combined with the loans my brother's family still hadn't repaid, the debt was enough to crush a family and drive people to commit acts that defy both morality and the law. 2 months later, after wrapping up my overseas business and returning home, I was shocked to find my house occupied and in a state of utter disarray, like a chicken coop. Checking the surveillance footage, I discovered that it was my parents, brother, and sister-in-law who had helped themselves. To my surprise, Shen Yao had been released from custody, though I had no idea how my brother's family managed that. Instead of arguing with the property management, knowing they would likely evade responsibility, I immediately called the police, reporting illegal trespassing, and then headed to a hotel. By afternoon my phone was ringing off the hook. It turned out the property management had removed all of my parents' belongings from the house and banned them from entering the compound. I blocked all their numbers, but the next day, to my surprise, my mother and the rest showed up at my company with a demure young girl in tow. "Aunt, I'm getting married, but I don't have a place to live. Your house in the city is nice. Give it to me, and I'll take care of you in your old age. You're so wealthy. Surely you don't mind, right?" Shen Yao got straight to the point. Looking at him, he now resembled a street tough, with his hair braided and dyed, and his gaze was filled with arrogance. "That's right, Pan Pan. You're getting older and still unmarried. Even if you do get married in the future, you might not be able to have children. Xiao Yao is your brother's son, your only nephew. You should rely on him to take care of you when you're old. He's in a tough spot right now with his wedding. You can't just stand by and do nothing." Zhou Qin chimed in, her words seemingly full of concern for me. My brother and father also seemed to think I should comply, but all I could hear were the calculating thoughts behind their words. From their explanation, I learned that my brother's family had tricked the family of the girl Shen Yao had raped. They claimed to own a multi-million yuan house in the city, and promised to give it to them if they dropped the charges and agreed to marry their daughter to Shen Yao. The girl's family, after seeing the house, readily agreed. I couldn't help but laugh. Whether I have children or not, I don't need a lowlife like him to care for me in my old age. My mother flew into a rage and started cursing at me. I had security escort them out. Before leaving, Shen Yao gave me a menacing look and threatened me. But I didn't expect that a few days later, my mother showed up with a swollen face, saying she couldn't stand living at home anymore. There was constant chaos. My father had hit her, and my brother hadn't defended her. She wanted a divorce and pleaded with me tearfully. "Pan Pan, you're all I have left. You won't abandon me, will you?" I was wrong before. I only have you and your brother. I thought that if you helped him when he was in need, he'd return the favor when you needed it. Forgive me for forcing you. I took her in, curious to see what her true intentions were. For a long time she seemed normal, being attentive to me, cooking me different dishes every day, and indulging my every whim. But that was until I discovered she had stolen the key to my safe and, along with my brother, sister-in-law, and Shen Yao, had taken a lot of my jewelry and valuables. And if I hadn't overheard them plotting my death in my own house to inherit my fortune, or found the substances they added to my food, I might have actually taken care of her in her old age. But with all the evidence laid bare, keeping her around would have been like nurturing a viper. I ate a small amount of the drugged food my mother gave me, and then went to the hospital for a checkup. When it was confirmed that I had been poisoned, I called the police immediately. After examining the home surveillance footage, the police uncovered all their crimes, including attempted murder, theft, and poisoning. I hired a lawyer and instructed him not to seek any settlement, leaving him to handle the case on my behalf. They tried every means to contact me, shifting the blame among themselves, but I ignored them all. Eventually, my brother lashed out at my sister-in-law, blaming her for the whole mess, and they got into a physical fight in public. In the scuffle, my brother accidentally killed my sister-in-law, and as a result, my parents and brother were all arrested. Since Shen Yao was a minor, he managed to avoid punishment for that incident, but he held me responsible for everything and plotted to run me over with a car. Before the attempt, he drank nearly half a bottle of liquor to steal his nerves. That day, my car was restricted from driving due to the traffic regulations, and since I didn't have much work, I left the office early. But as soon as I stepped out of the company, a car came speeding straight towards me. Fortunately, the security guards at the office building noticed the danger in time and raised the roadblock. The car veered slightly and missed hitting me directly, brushing past me instead. But because it was rush hour and the streets were crowded, the out-of-control car crashed into several people before speeding off in another direction. The scene was chaotic, filled with screams and cries. I was knocked down and felt dizzy and disoriented. As I was trying to get up, someone helped me and said, "Pan, are you okay? Don't move. I've called an ambulance." I opened my eyes with great effort and saw that it was an intern who had just joined the company. He was one of the outstanding students in his batch, very reliable. With that thought, I lost consciousness. When I woke up the next day at noon, the doctor said I had a mild concussion and several fractures, but nothing life-threatening. During my hospital stay, the intern took care of me, running errands and making sure I was comfortable. As soon as I woke up, he rushed into the room. "Sister Pan, how are you feeling?" Looking at his concerned and anxious eyes, I felt an odd flutter in my heart, but I quickly pushed the feeling aside. "I'm okay. By the way, what happened yesterday? How are the other injured people? Has the culprit been caught?" He gave me a brief account. Thankfully, no one had died in the accident, but 3 people were seriously injured with fractures, though their lives were not in danger. I heaved a sigh of relief. Shen Yao was arrested that morning. After the hit and run, he went into hiding, but when caught, he confessed everything out of fear, including that his sole target had been me. The intern also told me that Shen Yao seemed to have gone crazy in custody, constantly muttering that things shouldn't be like this, that he should still be studying at a certain middle school and had tutoring to attend in the afternoon. I didn't visit him until after he was sentenced. Despite being a minor, his crimes, including attempted murder, driving without a license, drunk driving, hit and run, and dangerous driving, were so severe that he was given a life sentence. And this shouldn't have happened. Please save me. I'm still young. I don't want to spend my whole life in prison. Aunt, please. Shen Yao was extremely agitated when he saw me, crying uncontrollably. "Then how do you think it should have been?" I asked. "We should have lived together. You would have due me to study, taken care of me, and I would have gotten into a great high school and then the best medical university. I should have had a bright future. How could this happen?" He grew more and more hysterical. I interrupted him. "And then what?" His pupils dilated, and he averted his gaze. I stood up, and he started screaming in panic. Ignoring him, I turned and walked out. So he had been reborn too. That was quite interesting. Even more interesting was that when I later visited my parents and brother, they were all raving that things shouldn't have turned out this way, as if the entire course of their lives was a nightmare. They believed they were supposed to live a life of comfort and luxury. My brother was even shouting that he wanted to see his twin children and his second wife, and the prison guards could barely restrain him. My parents still insisted that the police had made a mistake, that they hadn't killed Zhou Qin and didn't deserve to be in prison, that they should be at home enjoying their family life. After sorting out all the family affairs, I sold the house and transferred to another branch of the company in a southern city, far from my hometown. I was ready to start a new life. To my great surprise, the intern volunteered to follow me there. When I asked him why, he said his parents lived there and he had only stayed here for his studies and internship. But I never expected that his family was extremely influential in that southern city, and had extensive business dealings with our company. In other words, he was actually from a wealthy family. I thought he would soon leave the company and return to his life of privilege, but he remained dedicated to his work, even more hardworking than his colleagues who joined the company at the same time. I was quite impressed. During a company team-building event, I asked him why he stayed at the company and worked so hard despite his family background. He looked shocked. "Sister Pan, don't tell me you still haven't realized that I'm pursuing you?" I was even more stunned. Then I remembered when he confessed his feelings to me when he became a full-time employee. I had thought it was just a joke. I guess I haven't done enough. "Sister Pan, I'm going to step up my pursuit. Be prepared." I had always wondered why he, 5 years younger than me, was interested in me. Later, he revealed that when I went to his university for a recruitment talk during his freshman year, he was immediately drawn to me as I shone on the stage, and he couldn't get me out of his mind ever since.